It's the first Monday in April ahead of a pivotal NFL draft, so it's Mock Draft Monday as we look at several mock drafts from across the internet.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Special welcome to each and every one of you as we dive into our first Mock Draft Monday of the month of April. The Dolphins' 7 scheduled picks on the top 100. So I pulled from my own weekly A to Z mock draft. I pulled from USA Today. I pulled from CBS Sports and my buddy Pete Prisco. I pulled from ESPN. I'm blind reacting to all of these, other than my own, because I wrote it. I had somebody pass along the USA Today one and say, hey, Kyle, they really fumbled this first pick here. Take a look. So I decided to bundle some authentic first reactions into 4 mock drafts. Or at least they're billed as mock drafts. I need to see about this Bill Barnwell one because my understanding is this is we trade every pick in the first round, trade ideas for every pick in the first round. So we'll get some reactions, and that's where we'll start here on this mock draft Monday, where we're just kind of looking at scenarios, letting some other opinions. Obviously, I have my own opinions that I spend a lot of time on the platform sharing, but reacting to other people's thoughts, maybe getting some Inception-style inspiration on something else. So this Bill Barnwell mock is the first one. And this is indeed a trade every pick. Okay. So the first piece of content around the Dolphins, and I see there are 3 pieces of content around the Dolphins here. And I think I would really like this one, depending on what the board looks like at 11. Let me start there. Because there's no pick. That becomes very apparent very quickly, is there's no actual pick made. It's just the trade proposal. So it's 3 trade ideas for the Dolphins in the first round is how this is going to play out. Miami gets 11, gives 11 and 94, and gets back 17 and 50. So you move back from 11 to 17, and you go from 94 to 50. Now you're talking having 5 top 50 picks. You would go 17 or 4 top 50 picks. You go 17, 30, 43 and 50, and then still have 75, 87, and 90. Yeah. Our do not trade down list this year for the Dolphins is very short, right? It's like, I would not move away from Ruben Bain. I would not move away from Caleb Downs. I would not move away from one of the top offensive linemen unless you felt confident that you were going to drop back only so far to still get one of the top 3 guys, which for me would be the way that I have them ranked would be Penn State guard Ioane, Francis Mauigoa at right tackle, and then Spencer Fano would be my 3rd. And like, I would want to preserve keeping one of those guys in addition to Downs and Bain if he's there for you on the board. Delane, I'd have a hard time moving away from. The Dolphins are having him in for a 30 visit today or tonight. And he's going to be high up on my list. He's top 6 player on my board as well, but like not graded so highly that I would say he's more in the, hey, put him in that bucket of guys where however far down I move from 11, I want to make sure I'm still getting one of these players. So it's how many of those guys do you like and move down? But at the expense of 94 and getting 50 back for 6 spots, unless you have a way too good to be true option that's sitting there staring you in the face at 11, and those are some of the names that I would mention. And if a lot of them go in the top 10, maybe I'd stay and pick. I like this idea for the Dolphins. Now, the next one would be the Dolphins moving up and giving up a player, which is a really interesting idea. It's giving 30 and Chop Robinson to the Ravens for 14. So we didn't really get the warm and fuzzies when Chop Robinson has been brought up this far between John Eric Sullivan and Jeff Hafley at the owners' meetings last week, right? kind of we got to get to know him. We got to see what he looks like in his stance. He's got a responsibility to put his best foot forward, etc. I hadn't really considered the idea of moving Chop just because I'm pulling up his contract now. And this is what happens when you get the authentic kind of knee-jerk reaction stuff. So he's got 2 years left on his contract. He's due $2.1 million in cash this year. He's got a $4 million cap charge. And if they traded him pre-June 1st, they would save about $228,000 against the cap. So it's about break even on the cap. It's the prorated portion of his signing bonus. Is offsets what his cash schedule is. So the chance to get 2 top 15 picks suddenly would probably get you in a spot where you feel like you could probably get 2 of those names that we just mentioned, in that let's make sure we don't trade down too far to not get this player. And if one of those top 2 picks at 11 or 14 would be an edge rusher, maybe that's kind of the new infusion of DNA into a room versus a guy that you didn't pick, and maximizing him as a guy that you didn't pick, right? That's kind of the story of these builds, is we want guys that were our guys. And Chop does not have that about him, right? That's just an unfortunate reality of regime changes across the NFL. I think this is an interesting idea. I don't think there's any way the Ravens would take it, personally. I think the value is good as proposed. And we also have Miami, another trade back scenario with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Miami trading 11 and a 2027 6th. Oh, I like this one a lot. Now, this is risky business because you'd have to go back to 21, but it's 21-76. So you get another top 100 pick, and then you would get a second round pick in 2027. If you get the doomsday board, sign me up for this one. This one gets the blood flowing a little bit. So 11 and a 2027 6th to Pittsburgh for 21-76 and next year's second round pick. Now, would you ideally to drop 10 spots, get more this year than just 76? Sure, you would. But that 2027 second round pick, especially if Pittsburgh's going to kind of be floating around in the limbo period again, that could be a really compelling deal. And then let me see what Bill has for the pick at 30. Bill has Dolphins trading back to 36 and getting a future third round pick with the Raiders, and the Dolphins giving up a 6th round pick. So it's pretty much just moving back 6 spots and taking a 6th next year and turning into a 3rd. I like getting back to 36 for that, like, everybody restacks the board on Friday idea, but I don't think that's a great ROI, personally. So enough of the trade ideas. I really like that. I think the value's good on the Baltimore 30-14 deal. I really like the potential return on the Steelers deal. And I like the return on the Detroit deal. A couple different creative ideas, but it all depends on how the board in the top 10 shakes out, right? So we're going to get into my A to Z sports mock next on the other side of the break. Make sure you guys stick with us. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up. Your inbox is overflowing, in the one position that you have to fill, but still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit the role that you're looking for with skills, experience, and location. So you're not just sitting around hoping that the right candidate falls into your lap. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I'll talk to you about Indeed, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job posting the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now. Support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on the program. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions do apply. If you need to hire, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Also want to extend the invitation for everybody to check out our Everydayer Club here on the Locked On Network, where you get ad-free episodes of the program and access to a group chat in the Locked On Community Discord, and get a chance to talk about our shows and everything else across the network. The join link is in the show description below, as it is every day. Our next mock draft comes courtesy of yours truly, which also ran this morning. I did a 7-round Dolphins mock. I'll read through the whole thing and talk about some of the challenges that I faced with this I used the A to Z Sports mock draft simulator, which is new. This dropped last week. So excited to have another tool out there on the market. Obviously, of some of the places that I've had a chance to be hands-on with mock draft simulators, and seeing how this one is spreading its wings here at the month of April has been really cool. So you can check that out at A to Z Sports as well. So I took the Dolphins, did 7-round mock. Here's how it came out, and I'll talk about some things that came up along the way as I was making the decisions. Caleb Downs, safety, Ohio State, was on the board at 11. That was the pick that I made at 11. Francis Mauigoa, Ruben Bain, Sonny Styles, and Mansoor Delane were some of the names that were off the board in the top 10 that I thought were pertinent to specify. At 30 overall, TJ Parker from Clemson made it to that spot at 30. I thought it was interesting that ESPN last week kind of alluded to Parker as a fringe first-round guy. For me, he'd be up there in the late teens, early 20s. So if he's there at 30, man, that's a different style of player than what you currently have with Chop and Uche and Robert Beal and David Ajabo. I think that would be an awesome addition for a different skill set to your edge rush room for TJ Parker. At 43, Chase Bisontis. I was sweating what offensive lineman we're going to make it to 43. Now, Bisontis ends up making it to 43. He's a guard from Texas A&M. I thought he was a very quick decision to make at that point, because I do think he could come in and start and be an upgrade at one of your guard spots. Obviously, you have Jonas Vainai, you have Jory Sawyer as guys that are competing for another spot. He's a left guard, so you're probably looking at moving Jonah or having those two guys compete, or having everybody compete for the two spots, and whoever wins the left guard and the right guard spot, you let him play it. I double dipped on wide receivers in the third round. 75 and 87 went to Skylar Bell from UConn and Ted Hurst from Georgia State. Then Ephesians Prysock from Washington, a corner, 6'3" corner at 90. And Jayshawn Barham, a linebacker edge hybrid type at 94, is a double dip in the edge rush room. And then on day 3, I went with Hezekiah Massis from Cal, another corner. Dolan Bentley, tight end from Utah. And then in the 7th round, I went with fullback Max Bredesen from Michigan and quarterback Jalen Daniels from Kansas. So that's my 7-rounder this week. Obviously, the tone is set early with Caleb Downs being that top pick. And for me, it's a couple different layers. It's hearing Jeff Hafley talk about safeties and their importance and how he calls the game through the safeties and wants and needs guys with super high football IQ. That's part of it. The other part of it is kind of the Packers' MO of drafting offensive tackles and converting them to interior players. Now, Bisontis was not that realized, but the tackle run happens fast and it gets ugly. So if you wait, like I was already sweating what ones were going to be left over from the top 10 offensive linemen to be there, that regardless of guard or tackle, in the top 50. And I can tell you, for me, it's players that I have first round, top 10, first round, and late 1, early 2 grades. And the entire offensive lineman group is Mauigoa and Ioane, Spencer Fano from Utah, Monroe Freeling, and Caden Proctor. And then I've got 2s on Blake Miller, Max Ihanachor, Chase Bisontis, Emmanuel Pregnon, Sam Hecht. I think predictively Caleb Lomu's going to go in that area in the top 30, top 40 picks as well. So the well runs up fast. Now, I'm kind of enamored with some of the third-round grades, but those guys can just as easily be hits and misses, and the variance versus your expectation for when you draft a guy. And I think that's what added so much of the sting that we had with the Savaianaya pick, was that he didn't materialize the way that you'd hoped he would be as a player that you traded up in the top 44. right? The wide receiver duo of Hurst and Skylar Bell, I think those are two explosive players who have run after catch ability, who have a downfield ability. And I think about what this offense has been declared as, and hearing Sullivan and Halfley talk about, we want to be physical up front. We want to run the football with success, and then we want to hunt explosive plays. Guys that can get downfield, guys that can attack the ball in the air, guys that can create with the ball in their hands if they catch it in stride. These are two of those kinds of guys. And this is, again, kind of, you're putting everything that you're doing right now, until you have proof of concept of how this regime is going to do things their own way. The best predictor for future behavior is past behavior. We don't have any past behavior in Miami, but we have a lot of past behavior with the Packers organization, with John Eric Sullivan and the time that he spent there. So if he's going to take the same pillars of belief and bring them down, day two wide receivers is kind of where they butter their bread. So I liked how this draft class came together for fitting into some of the priors of how things were done elsewhere and kind of the team building philosophy and implementing that, while also applying the best player available. Like, I could have drafted Ioane at 11. Caleb Downs was there, so I drafted Caleb Downs, because I hear Jeff Halfley talk about how important it is for him to have super high football IQ safeties out there, because he leans on those guys to play the game within the game, as he calls a football game, defensively. Dolphins don't really have a ton of that right now. I will say Ephesians Prysock and Hezekiah Massis, the two West Coast cornerbacks that we went after here. Prysock's a guy that I think really has something to him. He's kind of, I don't say flown under the radar, and I know I drafted him at 90, so it's not like I drafted him super duper high. But I was pleasantly surprised when I watched Prysock play, as far as kind of the transitional quickness is not a hallmark of his game, as you would expect with a big 6'3" corner. But his hips were pretty loose. He's very long. He's very disruptive. I think there's some shades of like Joey Porter Jr. I don't think he's quite as, and Joey wasn't even super refined, but I wouldn't put my expectation on what Joey Porter Jr. was when he first came into the league, but I see some shades there of what Porter has become that I think Prysock has the potential to be. And he, again, fits the mold of these big, long corners that the Dolphins have started pooling in their cornerback room. And you want to talk about past behavior being predictive for future behavior. The Packers cornerback room, like, I know everybody's kind of anticipating, and I would expect we'll get reinforcements, but the Packers cornerback room really wasn't that much more well-stocked than what the Dolphins had last year before the injuries hit. Like, yes, they went out and they signed Nate Hobbs in free agency, and they gave him a $12 million deal. But here's the cornerback room for the Packers last year. Nate Hobbs in free agency, Keyshawn Nixon, Carrington Valentine, Kalen King, Kamal Haddon, Micah Robinson, Isaiah Dunn, Gregory Jr. Now, does that scream to you, wow, what an overwhelming priority they put on the cornerback position, as compared to McKinney got $17 million a year in free agency at safety. Bullard was a second-round pick. Evan Williams was a fourth-round pick in the same year's draft. And then they drafted Ketan Oladapo, who I was a huge fan of coming out of Nevada, in the fifth round in the same year. So they drafted three and signed McKinney the first year Halfley got there. So I hear you with the corner stuff. I'm not happy with the way the room looks right now either. But if you take Nate Hobbs out of the equation, and Hobbs spent the whole year hurt. Keyshawn Nixon, Carrington Valentine, Kalen King, Kamal Haddon, Isaiah Dunn, Micah Robinson, Tyron Herring, Gregory Jr., Jamon Johnson's linebacker. Like, it's just was, I kind of look at that and I say, hey, we got a smorgasbord of guys that are competing for spots. I would expect it plays out similar, and they'll draft somebody when they like the traits at a certain spot. I don't think it's a slam dunk. Wow, we have to take a corner in the top X picks that we have. I just don't see it that way. I could very easily be wrong because right now you're trying to make informed guesses until we get some actual proof of concept. Now, 2 more mocks on the other side of the break. Blind reacting to a USA Today alleged fumble with their mock, and then CBS Sports with Pete Prisco. That's next. Make sure you guys stick with us. NBA playoffs are here. Every possession matters. Every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing in a single series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. Here's what I like about it. You can bet just $5 to get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. The app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, matchups, all in one place. And during the playoffs, that extra insight really matters when you're looking at the stars, role players, and key moments. It makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. So I have the CBS Sports mock and the USA Today mock. And the USA Today mock is by Nate Davis. This ran this morning, was updated at 10 a.m. So let's see what we did for the Dolphins. Makai Lemon's the pick at 11. Okay. And this is going to be a popular selection for the Dolphins while their wide receiver room looks the way it does. But the fumble here, Ioane went at 10. Caden Proctor at 9. Mauigoa at 8. Sonny Styles at 7. Caleb Downs is off the board. Okay. Wow. So if that many offensive linemen went, that must mean Mansoor Delane was on the board and went at 12. I would rather have Mansoor Delane than Makai Lemon, and I just did the whole spiel on corners. I think Delane's a better prospect. Spencer Fano, I have in the same bucket as Makai Lemon. I would probably defer to Fano because of positional flexibility along the offensive line and longevity prioritized the trenches. Ruben Bain went 14. Yeah. I would have rather had each of the 3 players that went after the Dolphins pick with the CBS mock than who they actually picked at 11 with Makai Lemon. And that's no shade on Makai Lemon. I think he's going to be a productive player. I think he's a little unorthodox. I think there's some concern with his profile and whether you're going to draft him to be a 140 target guy in your passing offense. I don't think you are. Delane, Fano, and Bain in succession with 3 picks right afterwards. You could give me either one of those 3. And then we do redeem it a little bit because we go Colton Hood at 30. And if you are going to go corner early in this draft, and it's not going to be Delane at 11, Hood's the guy that I think profiles as the best press player. He's really aggressive. He's young, too, redshirt sophomore, right? Like that kind of stuff when you're getting into early draft choices and longevity and the cornerback position where, you if you're a 25-year-old coming into the league and you finish your rookie contract, you're going to be 30 by the time your rookie contract even rolls around. You might be a one contract player unless you are willing to accept a lower than market rate deal. So I think Hood has that working for him. And the 2 players that went after was Cade McDonald and Jadarian Price. So I'm not really seeing a lot that I'm sweating too much that came after. And I'm just kind of now browsing through who went between the pick at 11 and the pick at 30. Pete Prisco, CBS. Let's see what Pete did for us. He gave us Jermod McCoy at pick 11. Already don't love that. And it's no shade against Jermod McCoy. I have a first-round grade on him. But the medical flags are just a little unsettling and make me anxious a little bit based on I don't know what I do and don't know, right? Now, the testing was great. He missed all year last year. Feels like a high-variance player at a position that we just got done going through the laundry list of X, Y, and Z examples of why I don't think that it's like, wow, we have to do this early. Let me see who went off the board after. So Fano went 13. Mauigoa went 14. Ioane went 17. Those are all players that I would prioritize over McCoy at 11. And that's before you put in the filter of, I think corner's pretty deep. I already mentioned Hezekiah Massis and Ephesians Prysock, but you look beyond that. I mean, corners that I have top 100 grades on. I'll do the full list. Delane, McCoy, Brandon Cisse, Avion Terrell, Colton Hood, Traydon Stukes, who's probably a safety for a lot of teams, but is it like a nickel safety hybrid type? Same thing for Jalen Kilgore, D'Angelo Pons, Davison Igbinosun, Chris Johnson, Ephesians Prysock, Keontae Scott, Keith Abney, Devin Moore, Chandler Rivers, Julian Neal, Charles Demings. Like these are all top 100 grades for it's like 16 guys. To go first round with a guy who missed all year last year and the medical question marks that exist is just it wouldn't be my choice relative to some of these other guys like Fano and Mauigoa and Ioane, offensive line. And I know I'm speaking the language of a lot of folks that listen because I get the comments every day, right? We build the trenches. I hear you guys, right? Pick 30 was Dylan Thieneman, who I like a lot. I've got a pretty high grade on Thieneman, and I want to tell you guys exactly where I have him at. He's in the first round bucket of grades for me, so he's a top 15 player for me in this year's class. If you were to tell me he'd be there at 30, I would like that a lot. Obviously, that would be 2 picks in the secondary for Jeff Hafley. I don't like not getting any line of scrimmage players because now you're going into day 2 with you have your needs at wide receiver. You have not addressed the offensive line at all. And you have a need on the edge that you probably need to double dip on. And you've got 1 pick at 43, and then the next one's at 75. So if the board shook out like this, my response would be, okay, like I'm probably going to be advocating pairing 2 third-round picks to come up in the second-round pick and close the gap. Because otherwise I think you're going to be sorely wanting on either side of the line of scrimmage. So while I don't dislike the pick of McCoy from a value perspective, but the flag and the question marks is probably more variance than I would be willing to accept if I were making the decision. And then Thieneman is, I think, great value, but now you've done 2 secondary players. Now, if you want one of those offensive linemen at 11, where Fano, Mauigoa, and Ioane were all on the board, if you go that instead of McCoy at 11, and then you get Thieneman at 30, now we're cooking. Right? Because now we could say, hey, is there an edge rusher that we like that's there at 43? If the answer is no, you can go wide receiver. You could go corner at that spot if Colton Hood or Brandon Cisse makes it to you. But I think if you box yourself all the way into the secondary to start, and I know we've got the needs there, that to me just doesn't mesh with what I would expect the vision of the team to be based on what they've told us their vision of how they're going to build the team is. That's going to do it for us here today on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. Appreciate you guys as always for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. I'll be back again tomorrow. We're talking more Miami Dolphins football. I hope to see you then. Until then, fins up.